right. Welcome to the next episode of the Sensible Mama podcast. Today's guest is going to tell us about the difference in her experience between all the different varieties of birthing. She's had 2 kids in the hospital. She's had one at a birthing center and another in a home birth. And so I would love to hear your sort of honest assessment of what was good, what was the bad, if there was the ugly, what was the ugly, and we'll just kind of get into it and share with people what they can expect or what they might need to know when making the decision.
Okay.
Yeah. So you want to tell us about yourself, like what your, we can just jump right into the birth stories if you want.
Okay. Yeah. We could just jump right into the birth stories.
All right. So your first was a traditional, typical hospital birth. Tell us about that.
So I was 17 when I had my first, who is 17 now. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that there was another thing besides hospital births. I didn't know about birthing centers or home births. I just knew, like birthing sounds terrifying. And, how am I going to get through that pain, and the epidural, duh, So, my doctor never told me any other option or anything. So I just went with the epidural, Mm-hmm. I had no idea anything about induction either. I just went with it because doctors know best,
Of course.
You're taught to believe 100% what the doctor says are always right, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I thought, being a 17-year-old, your brain's not even fully developed yet. So I went in because what now I know was prodromal labor, but then.
And did they induce you? How far along were you?
I was 38 weeks.
Okay.
And I went in because I was barely having slight contractions, Braxton Hicks. And they were like, oh, well, want to get induced? I was like, yes. I'm an impatient teenager. Of course I want to get induced.
Right.
I'm uncomfortable, So I had no idea that getting induced means, you have to be hooked up to all the machines and everything, and you have to labor on your back and all that. I didn't even question it though, being 17, or whatever. It's my first baby. I don't know if being 17 was the reason. It could just be because it was my first baby. Never had, any education in it besides what the hospitals give you, mm-hmm. which is not much. I found that they're taught in intervention. They're not trained in natural birth.
Yeah. At that time, were they doing any sort of like childbirth classes or anything like that?
They did, but in the class, all they talked about mainly was the interventions. Jeez. They don't talk about how to get through labor like how you would expect. Or maybe slightly they touch on it. They're like, how do you put a diaper on a baby, stuff like that, instead of like what you should know, Gosh, like they don't give you the information that you need to make the decision. They don't tell you there's other options. They don't say you don't have to get cervix checks. They say, I am going to do this cervix check on you.
Right.
Or I need to do this cervix check.
Or it's just matter of fact, like this is happening now. And you're like,
yes,
okay, I guess.
That's the problem. Yeah. Even though I'm sitting there like, ow, no, that hurts really, really bad. Can we not? They're just like, oh, sorry. This is just, this is how it goes, even though I now know that I should have had a choice. 1, 2, cervix checks are completely unnecessary. They're not evidence-based at all. So
wild. How many people watching this are going to be like, wait, what? Come again? What?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's crazy. So then what happened? So you got induced and then what?
Yes. And then, the typical, you just lay there on your back the whole time instead of using gravity like you should be. You're hooked up to the machines, which are also not necessary. The machines, they put them all on you without really asking permission, more like saying, okay, it's time to do this, even though they don't say, oh, you don't have to have this, but
Yeah.
you
I
can if
assume
you
you had
want.
the needle, the hook up in the hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
They missed my vein over and over again. And, pain stalls labor.
Any kind of stress does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the change of environment can stall labor. That's why some people go in when they're having contractions. They get there and they say, oh, you can't stay because your labor isn't happening. But it's actually
Right.
because, your body is like, oh, I'm not in a safe place anymore. I have to
Yeah.
stall the labor is what is happening.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So then did you end up having any sort of other interventions aside from I assume it's the Pitocin?
Yeah, it was Pitocin. And then I asked for the epidural probably right when the baby was about to come out, during, what's the word?
Transition?
Transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just, it hurts really bad, and especially Pitocin contractions. The other ones are, of course, still very painful, whatever.
No, but I've heard that too. I've not experienced them myself, but anybody that I've spoken to who's had Pitocin, and particularly mamas who've had a birth with Pitocin and a birth without, the comparison is without fail, and it makes sense. Like oxytocin is the hormone that Pitocin is trying to mimic, and does to a degree. Obviously, it does something along those lines, but it doesn't pace the labor the way that natural oxytocin does, where your body gradually builds up the sort of the intensity and the speed and the strength of the contractions at a rate where your body is able to keep up. And Pitocin just goes wham, 0 to 60, and you're like, oh, okay, we're here now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And with the natural oxytocin with natural contractions, there's also other hormones mixed in that help you get through the pain better.
Yep.
It gives you like more of the feeling of love instead of, oh my God, there's more pain, go away, and you're like clenching, which is the opposite of what you want to do. Like, oh my God, I just learned so much, like after having the hospital birth. Oh my gosh, but I'll get to that.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah, I got the, typical lay on your back labor forever. Don't even know how long they were. They were so long. Both of them. This was the same story for both the hospital births. They're pretty much the same.
Wow.
And yeah, they just came in and checked me over and over, and it was super, super painful. I hated it so much. And I had no idea it was my choice. Oh, that just makes me mad. And then like, for the first birth, I got the epidural and I actually went to sleep. That's one nice thing about the epidural. Your pain is gone, after you get that, huge needle shoved between your vertebrae and all that. But
when you put it like that,
that's painful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not worth it to me. But so I was then numb, obviously, completely numb, and they, baby was ready to come out. I felt the baby there, like pressure, but not the pain. And so they told me, okay, it's time to push, put your legs up, and push as hard as you can, and then counting and all that. And that's bad. I found out later. I found out that coached pushing can cause tears because you don't need to forcefully push out your baby. That's actually...
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's so
Isn't
crazy.
that just absolutely bananas? Like, it's not to say that you can't. Like, some people naturally feel like this is a kind of a silly way to compare it, but like when you're pooping, sometimes you just sit there and you poop, right? And then other times you're like, okay, I'm pooping. Oh, I need to like strain a little bit to get this thing out. And it's like it's another natural thing that you do, right? Like, but your body tells you what you need to do and when you need to do it. And I don't know, like I'm working on writing a book where I'm going into like the deep dive of historically, why did we start deciding, like, why did we decide that this is something that we need to do? When did we decide that the woman's body is this helpless, useless piece of meat that doesn't know what it's doing? Because for a really, really, really long time, the human race has done just fine pushing out babies, you know?
Yep. And now suddenly it's treated like a medical sickness that has to be treated like by a doctor that is doing all these unnecessary things. Oh, it's ridiculous.
It is. It's absolutely crazy. So they're telling you to push and you're totally numb.
Yeah. So it worked. And, you know, I tore though really bad. I don't even know what degree. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell me anything. So at least they didn't give me an episiotomy without telling me, like some do.
Yeah.
Even though that's not evidence-based either.
Yep.
And it's harder to heal from, by the way.
Yeah.
But so yeah, baby came out. They put her on my chest for a minute and then they took her off me instead of letting me hold my baby. You know, they took her off, cleaned her, unnecessary. You know, put her on the scale, the cold, hard scale, and like all that completely unnecessary thing, you know, my gosh. So then they cut the cord. They didn't tell me anything about, you know, if you wait till the cord stops pulsing, then your baby gets all the blood that's in the placenta.
Right.
Instead, they just clamp it and cut it, and all that blood goes to waste, and they just throw your placenta away. And then the baby gets jaundice because they don't have enough blood because they didn't get all their blood out of the placenta, you know. So, of course, the baby has jaundice. My God.
Wow. Well, so at the end of it, I assume, though, you have 2 happy, healthy babies with both hospitals. Like, I don't want to be here, you know, saying nobody ever go to a hospital to have a baby. That's not necessarily my message. My message is you should have a baby at home. If you don't want to or can't have a baby at home, go to the hospital educated.
Oh, yes. That's
right?
What you need to do. Yes.
Like, you gotta pretend that it's just you responsible for the birth, you know, and a lot of the time, even with complications, you know, we call them complications or whatever, with things that stray from your idea of normal, you usually know ahead of time. Like if baby is small, if baby is big, if the placenta has some sort of, you know, isn't positioned exactly with where you want it or whatever. Like these are things that you often, if you're getting ultrasounds, if you choose to, you know ahead of time, and you can research those things ahead of time and say, okay, what do I need to think with? What are the positions that are going to help me? Is there something that I can do to make this the outcome more in my favor and in my baby's favor? Like go in knowing this stuff, like take it upon yourself to educate yourself fully. And then when you think you have enough information, get more.
Oh yeah. Just keep learning, keep listening to podcasts. Yeah. If I were to have a hospital birth now, I'd go in with a written down birth plan, print it out, put it on my door, give it to every single nurse and doctor, and it would say, no cervix checks. It would say, don't offer me medication. I'll ask if I want it. It would say, lights are staying off because I don't like bright light. You know, I would bring my fairy lights and cool looking things, crystals and stuff. And I would say no monitors unless for some reason I had some kind of high risk situation where I needed a monitor. Otherwise, no, it's unnecessary. It keeps you in one spot. Like you need to be standing up, walking around, squatting, swaying, relaxing, doing anything that can make you feel nice. Like taking a shower is really
dance
nice.
With your husband.
Yeah,
that's what got my water to break on my first birth. I was like, it was stalled. If I was in a hospital, somebody would have told me I was stalled because it was just not moving along. And I was like, this part sucks. And I got up out of the birth pool and just started dancing with my husband. And all of a sudden I felt like the beginning of the contraction. I was like, ooh, this one's different.
Oh.
And then the contraction happened and my water broke. And I'm like, oh, snap. We're doing this. And it was amazing. I'm like dancing. What doctor is going to prescribe dancing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a midwife would, not a doctor.
Yes.
I love midwives because they're trained in natural birth. So those are the ones that I like.
Yeah, agreed. All right, but you were giving us a list of other things. This is actually really good. I love this bit of what you would do if you were to go back into a hospital birth, the things that you would have. So we were on lights. What other things would you change?
So I said no monitors, no IV, unless, you could choose to have like the little tiny IV that stays there, and so you can still walk around, but it's not connected all the time. But if you're drinking water, and then you really don't need the IV, or if you're high risk, you might need the IV or something, depending on the risk. I don't know. So, because they can use the Doppler every 30 minutes instead of the monitor.
Yeah.
That way they can check on the heartbeat and all that. And what else would I do? I would tell them no coached pushing, no telling me what to do, basically. Just kind of leave me alone, be hands off. Like, I'll let you know if I need you, kind of thing. Keep the water coming, and like, yeah. No episiotomy.
Yes.
And then delayed cord clamping. And so the cord would be not pulsing anymore when they clamp.
Yep. I would add to that, if I were in your position, an hour of skin to skin before anybody touches the baby or bathes. Don't bathe my baby. I didn't bathe my baby for like a month.
Nice.
Which sounds like a crazy person, right? Like if you told me that, like I did the washcloth after a little bit to get all the, because there's stuff. We don't talk about the stuff, but there's stuff. So you I just wiped him down and whatever, but like, man, both of my boys, their skin is so healthy. It's like,
it really needs that stuff. Yeah. It's really good for their skin.
Yeah.
And it just rubs in like lotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually good for their skin. It's a protectant.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I would say don't touch my baby. Like, give me my baby, and then you can leave. Like, the Pitocin shot also not necessary. Like, after, to get the placenta out. If you just hold your baby, and then more oxytocin is released, which then makes the placenta release on its own. So if you're left alone, skin to skin with that baby,
the baby starts nursing, your placenta's coming out.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, because that causes. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I would say leave me alone for an hour, and so my placenta can come out, which I can remove myself. Just push a little tiny bit, and like you can slightly just pull on the cord, but there is the risk of it snapping, which is very unlikely, but it does happen sometimes. But yeah, you don't want a doctor being like, "Oh, I have to shove my hand up in you to grab your placenta," which you should not ever do. But sometimes they try it.
Yeah, with my second, on that note, with my second, my placenta took its sweet time coming out. If I was in a hospital, they'd be like panicking. Even my midwife was like, I'd like for it to come faster. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm good. Everything's fine. She's like, okay. I'd like a little bit. And I was like, nah, we're good. Let it come out. It's all good. And it did. And it was fine. Everything was great. Like I had, it's called marginal insertion, where instead of being like connected right at the center, it's off to the side a little bit, which come to find out afterwards. I was reading a book after the fact because I'm like geeking out about all this stuff now. If you tug on it when it's a marginal insertion, you actually increase chances of complications. And so my body just instinctively knew, don't touch, leave it alone.
Nice. Yeah.
It'll come out. And it was great. It went absolutely
good.
Smoothly. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Your body knows. Just gotta listen.
It really does. Intuition is like, something.
Yeah, it is. So cool.
So all right. So those are your hospital births. So now fast forward some amount of time and you're pregnant again. And I imagine at this point you're like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, because.
So what led you to change your mind?
Well, the tearing. It all comes down to the tearing. I learn, because I found this course online, the Mighty Mama Movement course.
Hmm.
I recommend it. It's like $100, which is a lot, but it's worth it because you learn a lot of knowledge, you know. But I like share all the knowledge as much as I can, which I am right now. So when I did that course, it taught me so much, you know, that I found out that tearing comes from coached pushing and from laying on your back when you're pushing, because your pelvis is 30% closed when you're laying on your back, with your legs wide open, like the way they do it. That was actually designed by some male doctor in the 50s, by the way.
Because it was convenient for him.
Yes, that's the only reason for that position. So that right there should tell you, don't do it. Which I didn't know there was an option at that time either.
Right.
But so I really wanted a home birth after I did that course, but my husband wasn't comfortable with it. So we compromised on a birth center.
Nice. And how was that experience? Tell us about that.
It was really nice. We went and toured the facility and met the midwives, and they kind of told us the whole situation. Like, you come here, it looks like nice bedrooms. You get to choose which bedroom you get to go into. And they have a tub. They have a shower with handles to hold on to. Mm-hmm. They have a nice big comfy bed and like dressers, you know, mirrors, typical bedroom sort of thing. And so they said they just kind of like let you run the show. It's up to you what you want. They check you with the Doppler every 30 minutes. They don't really do cervix checks unless you ask, or like, yeah, they might ask once, you know?
Sure. I mean, there might be a need. Like I tell people I'm not a doctor. I'm just a mom who's like geeking out about this stuff. There might be a medical reason to do a cervical check, but when somebody tells you, hey, we're going to do a cervical check, it is ultimately, like anything else in the process, up to you. And you can say, why? Mm-hmm. Or can we not? Or can I wait half an hour and then you ask me again? Or is this an emergency? You know, like.
Yeah. You never have to allow it, because it really doesn't mean anything. Like, you could go from 0 to 10 centimeters in 1 hour or in multiple days.
Yes.
Like, so you could be 4 centimeters walking around for 2 weeks, just, you know, before you go into labor.
Yeah.
So they also said that they measure the baby on the bed. They gave you skin to skin for an hour. Like, they did everything I wanted. I was like, oh my gosh, perfect. You know, this is exactly what I want, except it's not at home.
But it's the closest you could get to being at home. And you know,
yeah.
I respect that you did that, because having your husband on board is huge. Like, because that's another, it's going to be, if you have somebody there while you're in labor who is panicking or stressed or afraid, those emotions are going to play on your hormones.
Yeah.
And you, it's amazing how much you know, I hate to use the word like vibe or whatever, because it makes it sound kind of, I don't know, mystical or something. It's not. It's like, it's real. It's science. Yeah. It's like chemical, physical stuff, you know, for those that don't believe in the more mystical or spiritual side of things. Although I think there is a spiritual side to it, obviously too. But like, it's a real phenomenon where if there's stress, your body goes, stress? Wait, now is not it's not safe for me to bring this baby into the world at this moment. So we're going to like clamp it down and simmer down a little bit and bring it up later. And so having your husband and anybody else who's on your birth team, you know, if your mom is there, or a sibling, or your own brother or sister, or whomever you decide, if their vibes are off, then that's something that needs to be addressed, and you gotta have your husband on board. So I really respect that you went to a birth center, even though you wanted a home birth, because I'm sure that his support and his level of comfort, I'm sure, helped you in labor too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was hard to even let him get him to let me do a birth center too. We had to tour it and then ask a bunch of questions. And I had to be like, hey, can you like say something? I was talking to the midwife. Can you say something that helps, him trust in this process? And also while I was going through all the things I was learning, I was teaching him too along the way. But the midwife said, like, the hospital is like 7 minutes away. Like, it's safe. We have all the tools we need here, to deal with any situation, which is very rare. And they just don't have epidurals, And
oh no.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
And like, you're safer where you feel safe.
Right.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I try to kind of promote is like, if you feel safer at a hospital, if being at home stresses you out, then you should go to a hospital, and that is the place for you. But like I said, then go in educated and go in knowing what you're doing and what your choices and your options are, and don't let somebody else run the show. It's your show.
Yes.
But if you feel more comfortable at home and you're like me, where just setting foot in a hospital makes you feel super duper uncomfortable. Like, even if I'm not the patient, like my grandfather was in the hospital, earlier last year, and I went to go visit him. And the second you set foot in the hospital, I'm like, hey, I got the heebie-jeebies. I don't like it.
Yeah, me too. Oh, yeah. Terrible. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So then, any sort of cliff notes on the birth story of baby number 3? Everything went smoothly, or were there any hiccups?
Everything went pretty smooth. Like, we were on my way down. Like, so I went into labor the night before. I actually took 2 tablespoons of castor oil because it's a long story. There was a reason. Okay. And I was 40 weeks. I found a study on evidence-based birth saying that 2 tablespoons of castor oil for a normal, healthy pregnancy at 40 weeks or more is safe compared to what the doctors tell you to take when they say castor oil. I don't know if this is still a thing or not, but it was 4 ounces that they would tell me to take. And so no wonder that there's issues with that.
Wow.
But yeah, 2 tablespoons is what I did, and with my midwife's approval.
Yeah.
And so it started off slow, and through the night I felt more and more contractions, obviously. And in the morning at like 7 a.m. I knew it was for real. So I like woke my husband up, and he started getting everything ready, and then we left. He drove me down 45 minutes away. We lived in the mountains.
I hope the road wasn't too bumpy, because those contractions are like, I'm sure every bump sends it off. I remember just being at the end of like, I was like 8.5 months pregnant, and I remember like just my bladder alone, every bump that I had to drive over, I was like, oh
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was difficult. I would kind of like brace myself on both sides and like lift up a little, so I wasn't fully on myself,
Yeah.
So it was easier. But my water broke on the way. Luckily I had a towel under me. It was like on a little bump on a bridge right before the exit where the birth center was. So that's good.
Oh geez.
My husband was like, oh my gosh, yay, that means for sure it's happening. He was so happy. Yeah. And then I just like used the shower for pain relief and swayed back and forth. I learned that hypnobirthing is a really good way to get through contractions. It's like self-hypnosis. You put yourself somewhere else. You smell, like, for example, if you're at, an ocean in your mind, you're picturing what it looks like, obviously, the sun, how the sun going through the mist, and the sound of the waves, the sand on your feet, cold water or warm water, whatever you want, your world to be. And like, you taste the salt in the air and stuff like that. Like, get yourself in this other place.
I'm actually listening. I do audiobooks because as a mom of just 2, even, I have no time to read. But I'm actually listening. So I am very, very steadfastly against the idea of hypnosis, but I'm listening to the audiobook on hypnobirthing because it's such a popular thing. And I got to tell you, aside from the actual hypnosis part of it, like I agree with 90% of it, because the education, the reducing of stress, like she goes into all of basically everything that we've been talking about. Like it's your birth and your choices and you decide what to do. And you got to go in knowing what you're getting into and learning about the stages of labor and what your body is doing and all this stuff. And I'm like, yes, yes to all of that.
Yeah.
One of these days I'll write a whole separate blog as to why I disagree with the actual hypnosis part of it. But that's a whole conversation for another time. So, but
okay.
Anyway, but the point is, like, there are options that you can use and things that you can do to not have to use an epidural.
Yeah. That really got me through it. The water, they say water is nature's epidural.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it helps so much somehow.
And I don't really know what it is, and it's not even anything specific. Like I remember I was in transition going through, this was with my first, because with my second, I never made it in the water. I thought I had way more time than I did, and my pool never filled up. With my first, my husband laughs at me. He's like, you took the most intense naps, where I would close my eyes for about 30 seconds and I'd open my eyes and I'm like, oh, wow. How long was I out? That must have been like 45 minutes. He's like, maybe a minute? Maybe? Wow. I'm like, I feel so good. That's crazy.
Funny. Wow. That's magical.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Man, it helps a lot to get through the pain.
Yep.
Getting somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So then I got into the tub when I started feeling like my body start pushing a little bit on its own. So I was like, oh, that's what it is like, you know? And so instead of a doctor, you know, violating you to tell you, oh, you're 10 centimeters, like you can tell when you're supposed to push because your body starts pushing. Like even if you are 10 centimeters, if your body's not pushing yet, it's not ready.
Yeah.
So you have to wait until your body starts pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I'll put the caveat here just for, you know, YouTube reasons that consult with your doctor and all that jazz. But like, obviously if there's a medical reason, there's a medical reason, but under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And this doesn't happen under normal circumstances in a hospital. Like if everything else is going fine, they just say 10 centimeters equals push. And that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And some people feel their body start pushing when they aren't technically 10 centimeters. Yeah. And that's fine too. If your body starts pushing, you should start pushing because then it opens.
Yeah.
So
it's this crazy idea that the woman's body actually knows what it's doing. It's funny because it is something that you kind of have to do. Like there is something on your end that you have, like mentally, where you go, like there's like a moment of surrender where you're like, okay, you're right, body, you do know what to do, and I'm gonna let you guide me. Because I remember with my first, there's like this like mental, I was like pulling back mentally, not doing anything physically, but I was like, oh, I don't like this. I want to get through this. I want to get it over with. You know, like there was like that mental like withdraw sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there was one point where I was just like, okay, that's it. I give up on all of the pulling back and I'm just going to go with it because the only way out is the way through. Like, there's nothing else to do. Like, you're not going to be in the stage of labor forever because that's just and I just gave in and I was like, cool, let's do this thing. And then suddenly I had a baby, you know, and then with my second, I found it much easier where I did that right from the beginning, which made it much faster, way faster than even I thought I was. You know, my midwife arrived and she's like, oh, we're having a baby like now. And I'm like, nah, we've got hours. Is the pool filled up yet? She's like, okay, sure. Hours. 20 minutes later, I had a baby in my hands. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was cool.
So awesome. My fourth birth was fast like that too.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about this. So you had your fourth baby at home.
Yes.
Was this planned?
Yes.
Okay. How did you change your husband's mind? That's what I want to know.
Well, during the birth center birth, like throughout that pregnancy, I was like, so you'll let me have a home birth next time, right? Like kind of planting the seed.
Yeah.
And the midwife, I would ask her throughout the pregnancy also, like, what's the difference between, birth center and home birth and stuff. And kind of like getting it in his head that, we're probably going to do that.
Nice. That's
and
smart.
yeah. And she would say the only difference is the minutes away from the hospital. Like it really depends on how far away you are to the hospital is kind of the only difference.
Wow.
Because they bring all the stuff with them.
They do. Yeah. My midwife, I was very surprised to find out when I first decided to do a home birth, like she's got all the stuff, all of it. Mom, and more that you probably don't even know or need to know about. Like,
yeah, they came with
probably won't even be used, but they're going to be there just in case.
Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah. They bring everything. It's so comfortable. Yeah. But, I forgot to say at the birth center, after I had the baby, I got into the tub. Let's just go from start to finish. I got in the tub and was pushing for, I think, about 20 minutes. It was a little difficult. He was 8 pounds, 14 ounces. And so, yeah, it was only about 20 minutes, though. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
And then I was able to stay in the tub afterward and snuggle my baby and get the placenta out. And then I just stood up out of the tub. They helped me. They put a towel beneath me and like walked me over to the bed or to the toilet, I think, so I could pee, and then to the bed.
I remember doing that waddle.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they just did all the measurements after we had our hour, our skin to skin hour. They came back. They made sure also that none of my family or anybody came to bother us for the hour.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I really liked it. They didn't let me take a shower, though. They said that it's a risk of passing out or something if you take a shower, because if you possibly lose too much blood.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So I didn't know that ahead of time, though. So I was like, okay.
But in the grand scheme of things, like if that's the only thing that you had to fight about was whether or not you could wash yourself, that's really great.
Yeah. It was really good experience, though.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the home birth, right when I found out I was pregnant, I immediately contacted that same midwife and asked her if she would do a home birth, because we had moved also. So it took her an hour and a half to get to us.
Wow.
But she said yes.
Aww.
And so I told my husband, I was like, there's no birth centers around here. We'd have to go to the same one. And from here, that one is an hour and a half. So I don't want to drive an hour and a half in labor, So
particularly when it's your fourth baby, which, they not necessarily, it's not mathematically sound, but it tends to be that the more babies you have, the faster they come.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Because your body's like, oh, I know how to do this.
Yeah. I joked that my first baby put signs like out this exit.
That's funny. Like, this way to the exit.
Yep.
That's funny. Yeah. Oh, man. So he was convinced pretty early on, but he said he kind of was like, yeah, I guess, I guess we're doing it. But he still felt a little weird about it, kind of scared. But then I had my midwife talk to him again about it, told him how it's not any more risky, than a birth center, because we are actually only 7 minutes from a hospital here too.
There you go.
So, yeah. So it was really nice. Like my midwife would do appointments over Zoom sometimes, and sometimes I would go down to her, she lives in Roseville, California, and I'm in Orville. So it's like 45 minutes or so, maybe an hour. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when I went into labor also the same way that I did last time, with 2 tablespoons of castor oil at 40 weeks. I also took it with almond butter because that's supposed to counteract the laxative
Isn't that
effect.
like midwife's brew or something they call it, right?
There's
I
a
forget what's in it. It's like castor oil, some sort of nut butter, and something else is
yeah,
supposed to be there.
midwife's brew is similar in that way. I think it
Mhm.
has like some juice and the almond butter and I think something else.
Doesn't sound very appetizing, but hey,
No.
if it works, I suppose, right?
Yeah. So yeah, when I did it, I actually mixed it with peanut butter and melted chocolate, and because the chocolate is kind of oily already, so it's like just a little bit more oily than usual. Couldn't
Yep.
really tell it was even there. So with my midwife's approval again, and that time I was still nursing my other one. He's pretty much exactly 2 years apart. Like it's like 2 years and less than a month. So I was nursing him in bed right after I took the oil, maybe like 30 minutes after, and I felt like a rubber band pop sort of feeling in my your what is it called? Uterus. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, is that my water breaking?" Like a little nervous because when your water breaks, it makes it a little more intense, or a lot more actually. But then I got up and I was like, "Oh yeah, I think it was." And then I got into the shower and I was like, I told my husband, maybe you should call the midwife just in case, I think that might have been the water breaking. And then, like, while I was in the shower, he was on the phone talking back and forth, being the mediator. And I was like, oh, definitely the water is breaking, or broken, leaking. And they were getting more and more intense. And I felt the difference between the water from the shower to the, amniotic fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Slight difference. And I was just like, oh crap, this is definitely it. So she was like, okay, I can be there in 2 hours. And I was like, ooh, oh my God, I hope that's enough time.
Jeez.
Because I don't know, I just had a feeling the whole time that it would go kind of fast. Because my other birth, my birth center birth, went pretty fast because I feel like it was because of not clenching, like welcoming the contractions, swaying, and I heard in the course that I took that you're supposed to relax your forehead and your shoulders and your hands and your jaw.
In your
It's really
mouth.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a
That
huge,
way.
it's really weird because you don't think about it, but like I would challenge anybody listening to this. Again, I'm gonna bring up poop. I'm sorry. This is a thing. But like instead of straining to poop, if you relax into it, like, and this is what I used to do. I used to practice while I was
Yeah, you
pregnant
can
when I was
practice.
pooping. Because like they tell you to do horse lips, right? Like
Yeah.
that because it makes all of these muscles super relaxed and you can't clench your jaw and do that at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really weird how effectively these muscles, your shoulders, your fingers, like if you're going like this, the rest of your body tends to also clench up. But if you just get
Yeah.
everything all loose and flowy, it's the weirdest thing. Your whole body goes,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much easier to get a baby out like that. Man,
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
easier. Yeah. Way less painful contractions too when you're relaxing like that.
Agreed.
Yeah, man. So I got out of the shower. My husband started pumping up the pool I made a nice pretty little birth corner with like a tapestry of moons, and like a cool looking like dream catcher and fairy lights, and we had candles and that thing in the background here, that colorful thing. It moves too, or it used to move. Now it's
Oh,
broken. And so it was just really pretty in here. All the lights were off besides the colorful lights and candles. And we had Native American flute music playing. And yeah.
it sounds really peaceful.
And then also I put on eucalyptus oil in the diffuser. So I try
Nice.
to get like all the senses, as many senses as I can to be in like a calming state.
Mm-hmm.
So the sound of calming music,
And that's
seeing.
going to look different to everybody, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's a very personal thing. Like, some people want music. Some people, for me, it was, I want dead silence. I want nobody talking to me. I want just complete silence. And for some people, it's lights on or lights off, or colored lights or fairy lights, or, being in your bedroom or your living room. Like, there's no one size fits all, because what you find relaxing, somebody else might find annoying, and vice versa. And so you sure, go to other people for inspiration, but at the end of the day, you've got to set it up the way that makes you the most happy, right?
Yeah, whatever you feel like is the most comfortable you could possibly be. Like, just write that down and then get that in your birth story for sure. Your birth plan. Man. So I put that the pool, the blow up pool, in that corner where I had the tapestry. It's right here in my room, but it's not set up all perfect, so I'm not going to show you it. But I could show you.
I'll just imagine it. It's okay.
But yeah, I'll send you pictures of it if you somehow want to put that on here.
Sure, yeah.
So while he was pumping up the pool, I had my yoga ball on the bed. I had puppy pads down to collect the amniotic fluid, while I leaned on the yoga ball, back and forth, and breathe slow and deep, and imagine being at that on the ocean. And sometimes I would imagine riding a wave, like a really big wave, and then having it go back out, over and over. And
that's kind of what it feels like, right? Like that's even when they draw contractions, like they have a wave pattern where you can feel when it's about to start. Like there's some warning, which is weird. I didn't expect that when I was first going into labor, but there's oh, it's coming. And then it goes up, up, up. And then there's this crescendo where it's like the most intense. And then it just
Yeah, man. Yeah. So picturing a wave helps a lot with that. And I also was picturing the river in Pocahontas, because for some reason the Pocahontas song was in my head. I was focusing on that, focusing on the grandmother tree, the willow tree, because my daughter's name is Willow. So that's probably why. I had willow branches also, pretend willow branches, all over my birth corner. And so that's how I got through the labor, just welcoming the contractions, knowing it's coming, relaxing everything, and just swaying and just letting that baby come down, and you also have to think about that the baby is also wiggling and twisting and getting down there for you.
I was gonna say that was one of the big differences between my first and my second. My second one, I was like, we're doing this. We are doing this. It's not just me. It's not just a one person, one man, show over here. It was me and the little dude in there. And it was really, really cool, because the contractions with my second were far more intense than my first were. They were jam-packed into a third of the time, and they started fast and strong, and they did not give me any kind of break. But it wasn't anything I couldn't tolerate. It was my way of laboring is not as peaceful and serene sounding as yours, but it's still in its own way. For me, I love it. I was like, this is a blast. High energy. I would hold on to my husband's hands like this, and I was tossing him into walls. I'm like, yeah, we're doing this thing. Poor
That's
guy.
So funny.
And and with my first, I'm just kind of saying this to show that everybody's going to be different. Your setup sounds so beautiful and so peaceful and so serene. And what is it? Colors of the Wind, right? Is the song from Pocahontas? It's a beautiful song, and I love that song. And yet here I got out of the pool at one point, and I started rapping Eminem, because that's just what was going in my mind at the time. And that is very much not a what you would imagine a peaceful, beautiful song. And yet that's what got me through.
Yeah, you're more of a warrior kind of person.
something, yeah. But it's so personal. It's such a beautiful, like, I love listening to your story. It sounds so serene and so gorgeous, you know.
It was really nice, man. I was focusing on it for the whole time I was pregnant, you know, that I wanted it to be just like that, and it was really nice. Yeah. So
I love that.
like right before I was like I checked myself to see if I could feel baby, and she was only like a couple inches in. I was like, oh, that's her head, you know. Oh my god. And then I was like, I think I need to get in the tub, you know. So he was like, all right, it's done. Do you want me to put, oh yeah, it was like halfway or after he pumped it up, he was like, you want me to put hot water in it now, or you want to wait? I was like, now. So it was all full right after I felt her head, like maybe a few minutes later.
Wow.
And my midwife got there right before I got in the pool. And so she checked the heartbeat once, and that's pretty much all she did. Because I told her also that I want a really hands-off birth too. Yeah. I kind of like told her to stay in the other room, sort of, you know, like no offense to you, but I really just want this to be like, you know, as unassisted as possible.
That's amazing. And midwives are not offended by that.
Yeah.
They don't get offended. They're like, you do you, girl. I got you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they like it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got in, I felt that I was starting to push, and I was like, oh my gosh, here it goes, you know. And it wasn't very long, and I like felt her coming close to coming out. And I also have coconut oil nearby to put on, I just feel like it might help, you know. I also didn't care for my birth center birth. I forgot to say that.
Yeah,
I used coconut oil as well for that one.
Nice.
But I just let the baby come out, you know, on his own, like leaning. In both of these births, I was on my knees, like leaning forward, and I also learned that if you put your knees closer together, it opens your pelvis up.
The exact opposite of the hospital position.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you can find videos. I should probably find one and link one in the description or something. But like if these are your hips and these are your knees and you put your knees together like this, it like you can physically see in various demonstrations how the hips literally open up like a mile, you know, like the baby's so much more room. Nobody says that. Like who's well now people are talking about it, but
yes. Yes. I love it. I love to spread the word. Man, it just bothers me so much that I was not told, you know, when I was a teenager.
Do you feel like, I don't know what the word that I'm looking for is, but like, do you feel that having had these two natural, you know, at a birthing center and then at a home birth, do you feel like you
like empowered?
Like empowered, or like you got something back that was
like I took my power back.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've heard that before, and I don't have that experience, but I imagine that must be so wonderful. Like,
yeah, it's so nice. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm so glad I learned it and that I could spread the knowledge. But so when I felt her crowning, you know, I felt her little head and was like, oh my God, yes, her head is small. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, it's almost all the way out already. And the coconut oil, I think helps, even if it is underwater. It's still yeah. And then so it was just one contraction that just continued too. Usually they stop after the head comes out and then you get another one, but this time it was like all at once. So her head came out and I was like, oh my God, is the rest of her coming out? And she did.
That's what happened with my second too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So weird.
Yeah. And my water broke at the same time. Like it was literally head, water broke, body.
Yeah. Crazy. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Some babies come out in the sack still.
Yeah. I almost had that, but he was like, nope, no.
So cool, man. So she came out under the water and I was just like looking at her under the water for a minute and then lifted her up and she was so tiny and cute. Oh my gosh. She was only 6 pounds.
Oh.
Same as my first baby. My first girl was 6 pounds 1 ounce, and then my second one was a boy. He was 8 pounds 7 ounces, and then my third was a boy, 8 pounds 14 ounces, and then my fourth was a little tiny 6-pound little girl.
Oh.
So cute.
I have big children. I also have 2 boys, and so who knows? Maybe it's just that boys are bigger. I mean, anecdotally, this is totally
For me,
just
yeah.
based off our 2 stories, right? My first was 9 pounds 6 ounces. I did end up tearing, even though I was at home, but it was a minor tear. I didn't need stitches or anything. I healed up a little bit. And then my second was 8 pounds 7 ounces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still normal sized though.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the other thing. Like this, man, we're like already almost at an hour. I just noticed we have like another 5 minutes to go. I'm telling you, it always flies by. I get like so engrossed in these stories. I love hearing birth stories. This is another like message that I kind of really want to spread is normal as a category when it comes to birth, when it comes to pregnancy, when it comes to babies and labor. Normal is such a huge range of things.
Yeah.
People are like big babies, small babies. I'm like, you're like, yes, there is such a thing as a baby that's really, really big or really, really small. There are extremes, but the range that is normal is encompasses a lot more than I think most people realize.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Normal goes up to like 9.5, 10 pounds,
My midwife, she always has a chart in her office, which is like, that month's births. And so she'll write like just the first name and then the weight at the birth. And I remember going in for an appointment or something one time. I can't remember when it was. And she had a home birth that was 11 pounds.
Dang. Yeah.
Said the mom did amazing. No problems, like none complications. Nothing went wrong. No tearing. Like it was just like a big baby. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. Like,
yeah.
It's like over 99% of like people, women, obviously, like will birth the baby that they can't. Like your body is not going to make a baby that you can't birth. Like there's a specific, very rare condition that causes that.
Yes.
And it's not anything.
And you'll know if you do your research. Like for example, you every time you go to an appointment, they measure your belly after a certain point. So you're gonna know if the baby is measuring bigger or smaller, and that's okay. The other thing is my baby was measuring humongous. Like my midwife was like, "Ooh, he's gonna be like close to 10 pounds," and it ended up just that my amniotic sac was just a lot. And he was a whole pound smaller than his older brother. So even there, like ultrasounds
they're not accurate.
No. So I don't know. And it's there's so much fear connected to all these things, and I wish that I could just take it away.
Yeah, me too.
Stop being afraid. It's okay. Even when they were like, "Oh, you have marginal cord insertion," and I'm like, "That sounds serious. That sounds terrible." And then I was like looking it up, and Google is like, "Well, it could cause this, and if it grows that way, you could have stunted growth." And I'm like, "Well, he's measuring fine." And also, like your gut and your intuition are so powerful. If you feel like something is wrong, by all means, go get it checked out. Go do tests or whatever, but don't let it be because the medical professionals are just leading you into a road of like a fear, right?
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, they try and like, man, it's so common to like people are saying, "Oh, my baby is going to be 8 pounds. My baby's 9 pounds," when they have no idea how big their baby is. Like those ultrasounds are only 50% accurate. 50%. That's like, that's a failed grade right there.
Yeah.
That should not be being used to determine a C-section or an early induction. Like
that was the final straw for me. Well, one of them was my baby was measuring big and I was at 8 months and they were like, "We'll have to induce you at 39 weeks." And I was like, "But why?" And they were like, "Because." And I'm like, "But but why? Because I felt like my
Yeah.
annoying, like the annoying toddler inside me was coming up, but why? But why? But why?
Yeah, they
And
should
all
be
I got
very
was,
like, ugh.
yeah, and all I got was, it's just the way it's done. It's just the way it's done. Well, you
Yeah.
might tear. And I'm
Mm.
like, but what if I'm not afraid of tearing? Are you still going to induce me? They're like, well, it's just what we do. And I'm like, what if I opt out? They're like, well, you could,
Yeah. Oh,
Mm,
yeah. It doesn't
yeah.
even increase your risk of tearing to have a big baby at all.
No,
That's not what causes tearing.
no, you could have a 6-pound baby and have a tear. You could have a
Mm-hmm.
12-pound
That's
baby
what
and
I
have
did.
a tear.
My
So,
first baby was 6 pounds and I tore the worst
yeah.
out of all of them. Like, and I know it was because of the way that I was on my back for my male doctor while he was telling me to push with all my might.
Mm,
Like, having the baby's nose or chin pop out fast is what causes the tear. That's what my midwife told me.
mm.
So that she told me to prevent a tear, that you want to just let your body push. When you're crowning, you want it to go really, really slow.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I don't know, like I don't know that I have one particular takeaway from all this, but there's a few. Is don't let fear lead you. Get yourself educated, know what you're getting into, and then above
Mhm.
all, listen to your body and work with your baby.
Yeah.
It's a system that has tried and true. It's worked for a very, very long time, and barring very rare complications and like real situations, most of the time, I don't know what percent, but it's a lot, most of the time your body is going to tell you what to do. And if you just
Hmm.
be quiet and listen to it, you'll be fine.
Yeah. My gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're at an hour. Do you have any sort of final closing thoughts for my audience here?
Um, I would say don't forget that you're the boss of your own birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to trust your body.
Couldn't agree more. Well, hey, thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected. I loved listening to your story. I hope that it brings a lot of value to people who are, debating where and how they should deliver their babies, and I hope that it helps people.
Me too, man. I hope so. I know it will.
Absolutely. I have no
Thank
doubt.
you. I enjoyed it.
Awesome.